Good afternoon. I'm a historian from Krakow. I work in the Historical Museum of the city of Krakow in branch Pomorska Street. My intermission is about the Pomorska Street and memory restored. At the beginning, I told you a few words about the history of the building of the Silesian House. On 13 September 1939, Dom Śląski Silesian House, former headquarters of the Union for the Protection of Western Borderland, was commemorated by German occupation authorities. The Einsatzkommando II, a German task force that arrived in Krakow at that time and took the building. Einsatzkommando II was a unit of Einsatzgruppe 1 of the security police, Sicherheitspolizei, and the security service, Sicherheitsdienst, commanded by the SS Sturmbannführer Bruno Miller. In November 1939, Einsatzgruppe 1 was dissolved and replaced by the headquarters of the of the security police and the security service. After Department 4 of that office was the German secret state police, Geheime Staatspolizei, Gestapo. During the next years of war, German have been occupied houses adjacent to Dom Śląski. Room on the second and the third floor were adapted for investigation carried out by the Gestapo. Some of the cellars were converted into holding cells for detainees under interrogation. Inscriptions left on the cell walls by prisoners in the years 1943-1945 have survived to this day. According to an inventory made by the Historical Museum of the city of Krakow in the 60s, the total of some 600 inscriptions had been left in the cells. This ununique and shocking document of the Nazi occupation era has been made available to the visitors at the museum. Some of the inscriptions were made by using crayons, pencils. Others were carved into the walls. The inscriptions bear evidence of the victims' experiences and emotions such as fear, hopelessness, and anxiety about their relatives. Through some of them, prisoners with an inkling of their own death during interrogation and torturers bade their last farewells. Many of them preserved inscriptions are prayer-like in form. In others, the authors begged for rescue or death that would bring them relief from torture. Among the inscriptions are first and last names, initials, nom de guerres, dates, drawings, and signs. Most of the inscriptions are anonymous. Calendars have also been preserved on the cell's wall and door, made by the prisoners who thus counted their days in detentions. Based on this, it can be concluded that people have been kept in the prison of Dom Śląski, the Silesian House, for several weeks. Most of the prisoners in the holding cells were people from district Krakow, of the general government. It was the part of occupied Poland. In terms of nationality, most of them were Poles, as evidenced by inscriptions on the cell walls, sometimes Russians, Czechs, Frenchmen, and even Germans were also imprisoned here. It is not known the exact number of the people that had died as a result of torture during interrogations conducted by the German officers. Many of the prisoners were deported to concentration camps or executed. The Gestapo had left Dom Śląski, the Silesian house, by 17 January 1945. Now we came back to the history of the origin of the Silesian house. Construction of the Dom Śląski began in 1939 as the initiative of the Union for the Protection of Western Borderlands. An elegant modern building was built for a different purpose. Here we can read some extract of purpose. The ceremony at the laying of the foundation stone ended with the words, "May this house founded to serve the purpose of culture and education symbolize the lasting and imperishable bond between immemorably Polish Silesia and ancient capital of the Piast and the Jagiellonian dynasties." The founder meant the Dom Śląski to be a place that would provide Silesian students in Krakow with a condition for learning and a center for education and research devoted to the Polish-related issues in the context of the country's western borderlands. The house offered the accommodation facility for participants from Silesia and Poles living permanently in Germany. The cinema hall for 7 seats with a balcony, a lecture hall for 300 people, a reading room, canteen room for the organization of Upper Silesia, and even 12 private flats. The building was opened in 1936. When the Red Army arrived to Krakow, the building was commemorated for the purpose of the 1st Infantry and Cavalry Officers Schools in Krakow, which trained future cadres of the People's Army of Poland. The school was managed by Soviet officers seconded from the Red Army to serve in the Polish Armored Force. The cinema at Dom Śląski was used to the purpose of culture and propaganda activities. In February 1945, the cinema Wolność, Polish for Freedom, was opened there. The cinema was also used to stage plays. From April 1945 to June 1946, it housed the Rhapsodic Theatre. One of the actors in the company during the German occupation was Karol Wojtyła, who later became Pope John Paul II. The flats of Dom Śląski, the Silesian house, were rented to Krakowian actors. Re-established in 1944, the Polish Union made effort to repossess the building, which ended with success in November 1945. Soon after, the building was placed at the disposal of the Society of Students at the Academy of Mining in Krakow. In addition to its past activities, at that time, the association was also involved with the integration of the Western territories that had been annexed to Poland after Second World War. The authorities of Communist Poland liquidated public organizations whose origins dated back to before the war. To achieve that, several organizations were combined into larger structures, while their pre-war activists were persecuted, dismissed, and replaced with new people. In 1950, the Polish Western Association was merged with the Maritime League, which actually meant its being liquidated. As property of the Polish Union, Dom Śląski was taken over by the board of the Krakow section of the Maritime League. In 1953, during another reorganization, the Silesian House was transferred to a new organization which have the name Soldiers Friends League. After, we have another reorganization. In 1963, the Soldiers Friends League was transferred into the Country Defense League, which has been in existence until the present. In 1989, the Country Defense League became the lawful proprietor of Dom Śląski and has been the administrator of the building to this day. The necessity to commemorate the victims of German terror emerged among the people who had themselves been prisoners of the Gestapo. The first commemorative plaque was founded and manufactured by one of such prisoners, Franciszek Łuczywo. The plaque was unveiled on 1st November 1945. After the war, the former Gestapo cells were visited by victims' relatives who treated them as a special type of cemetery. In 1946, the Regional Commission for the Investigation of German Crimes undertook efforts to create in Dom Śląski a museum, but the initiative did not find support and been quickly forgotten. For almost 19 years, the former Gestapo prison was not of interest of any museum or documentary institution. Only the administrator of Dom Śląski, Ludwik Koszeliński, cared for its ability to maintain unchanged objective. Over the years, the memory of Pomorska Street has become more and more the domain of former prisoners. The street where Dom Śląski was situated had changed its name from Pomorska to Józef Wybicki Street. For many years, there was no possibility of any commemoration for the victims. Only in March 1966, in the cells at number 2 Józef Wybicki Street, a group of employees of the Historical Museum of the city of Krakow held the first inventory of the inscription left by the prisoners of the Gestapo. In 1968, museum request of the National Council of the city of Krakow to creation at this place a branch of the museum, Martyrdom Museum. This request never received an answer. In 1972, the museum issued the first publication of the history of Pomorska Street by Stanisław Czerpak and Tadeusz Wroński. The most important part of this compendium of knowledge about Pomorska is comprehensive list of inscriptions gathered during inventory in the 60s. Results of maintenance inventory and editorial works by the Historical Museum of Krakow pointed to the necessity of care and conservation of this place and need for creation were a national memory monument. Over the next years, the museum and Second World War veterans lobbied for the creation of a museum here. In 1974, the museum presented a concept for a plan for the Museum of Martyrdom and Struggle. It seemed that the efforts of the museum was crowned with success in connection with the acceptance of the project by the Communist Party authorities of Krakow. On January 17, 1975, on the wall of the Dom Śląski, a commemorative plaque was unveiled. On 5 November 1981, by the decision of the Minister of Culture and Art, the museum was established as a division of Historical Museum of the City of Krakow. The main task of the museum branch in Dom Śląski is to preserve the memory of the victims of this place. The condition for preservation of this memory is knowledge and its dimension. The branch of the museum from the beginning consisted of two parts: the cells of the former Gestapo prison and the permanent exhibition presenting the history of Krakow for the years 1939 until 1945. In the 90s, the exhibition was changed and expanded to include the history of Krakow during years 1945 and 1956, and thus also included the period of Stalinist terror. Cells were presented without any interference to their condition without museum exhibits. In June 2010, in the former administration building of the Deutsche Emailwarenfabrik at 4 Lipowa Straße, located in the district of Podgórze in Krakow, the Historical Museum of Krakow opened a new branch of the museum, Oskar Schindler's Factory, with the permanent exhibition Krakow, Time of Occupation, 1939-1945. The exhibition presents a comprehensive wartime history of the city as seen from three perspectives: the Polish and Jewish inhabitants and the German occupiers, who made the Krakow the capital of the occupied Polish territory, General Government. In conjunction with the opening of the exhibition, a new exhibition was prepared at Pomorska Street. On 2nd June 2011, at Pomorska Street branch opened a new media permanent exhibition titled People of Krakow Against the Terror, 1939, 1945, 1956. This exhibition is intended to rescue from oblivion of the names of the victims, their fate, and the tragic events of the years 1939, 1956, in which they were the participants. It shows the mechanism of terror, violence, and the attitudes of the citizens of Krakow against the repressions of two totalitarian systems, presenting the fate of some characters and difficult choices. It preserves the memory of them and tragic period in the history of the city. The exhibition is convinced as a kind of significant supplement of the Oskar Schindler's Enamel Factory, which is built around the myth of the Oskar Schindler's personality. At Pomorska Street, visitors have the opportunity to establish intimate contact with the two dates' close history. that is still alive and has a chance to remain alive for future generations. A complementary element of the exhibition is an archive containing biographies of Krakow citizens, the victims of German and communist terror in the years 1939-1956. The archive can be used in a branch of Pomorska Street or online. At the permanent exhibition in Dom Śląski are also files containing documents and photographs of the victims. Archives will be constantly updated with new information and documents. Equally important for the organizers was to recall what the word Pomorska meant in the days of the occupation of the people of Krakow and what fear it caused. In last decades, associated with communist cinema Wolność, Freedom, music club Freedom FM, and now with the television detective drama W11 Headquarter, should be combined primarily with the history of occupied Krakow. Present owner of the Dom Śląski and thus owner of Place of Memory rents its space to various business and institutions, also to the museum. The building currently hosts 2 hostels, a fitness club, a driving school, shooting range, diving club, betting agency, office of Country Defence League. At the courtyard there is a private parking. This all interferes with the nature of Dom Śląski as important place for the history of Krakow. Museum, by the permission of the owner, carries out a number of renovation work which are leading to improve the quality of museum. Exhibition space directly far away from the cells of the former Gestapo prisons. Pomorska Street, together with the pharmacy under the Eagle, Apteka pod Orłem, and the Oskar Schindler's factory are the branches of the Historical Museum of the city of Krakow, which deal with the history of Krakow during the Second World War. These institutions form the road of remembrance of the Historical Museum of Krakow. This trail road is yet another possibility to understand the difficult times of the Second World War. For those who are coming to Krakow to see places associated with the Holocaust, in this context it is worth recalling an unknown history of Dom Śląski on Pomorska Street, wrongly identified only with the martyrdom of Poles. Jews of Krakow were also questioned here. The Gestapo was planning and deciding about Holocaust action in Krakow here at Pomorska Street. Now some conservation issue. From April to June 1967, at the request of the Municipal Heritage Preservation Office in Krakow, first conservation work at Dom Śląski was conducted. During this time, the drawing and the photographic documentation was prepared. The former Gestapo cells were protected by the Civilian Committee for Protection of Monuments of Struggle and Martyrdom in Krakow. In 1976, inscriptions at the cells were vanishing due to water leakage from the side of the students' hostel. The museum began to intervene with the different institutions responsible for this condition. As a result of these efforts, restoration works were done in the years 1977 and 1978 and in 1981. The basement dampness was caused in large part because of the lack of effective wall and floor installation and improper use of premises near the cells. In 1996, another conservation expertise was made. Based on those results, in 1997, complex building and restoration works were carried out. The conservators have changed the layout of the pavement surface of Pomorska Street and built many things to preserve leaking the water. In May 2011, in order to secure the inscription in 3 cells of Dom Śląski, steel and glass panels were built. Opposite the cell 1, in a former toilet, rebuilt after the war, are presented photographs taken during the inventory of the inscriptions. Over the years, part of the wall writings has been partially or completely destroyed due to the high humidity in the rooms. In the 90s, museum made attempts for a legal secure status of the former Gestapo detention cells in Krakow. On 9 December 1997, Dom Śląski, the Silesian house, was entered into the register of monuments by the provincial conservator. Unfortunately, this decision of the Małopolska Conservation Office has been appealed by the owner of the building, the National Defense League. At the request of the owner, the building was examined by the General Inspector of Monuments. On 1st August 2000, the decision of the entry of the Dom Śląski into the Register of Monuments was cancelled. For about a quarter of a century, we see the world's growing interest in the history and the memory of the past. This interest of even a particularly painful history of the Second World War in Krakow confirms the great success of permanent exhibition. Krakow time of occupation 1939-1945 at the Oskar Schindler's factory. From early 2011 until the end of the August exhibition was visited by more than 200,000 of visitors. The exhibition was honored by several awards, including the prestigious award for the museum event in 2010 in category of historical exhibition. The increase in number of visitors was also noted at Pomorska Street. For comparison, in 2001, we had 900 people visited Dom Śląski, the museum. And in the following years, attendance has grown constantly. In 2009, the Pomorska Street branch was visited by a record number of tourists and citizens of Krakow, 5,000 people. Since the opening of the new exhibition and the former Gestapo prisons from June to the end of September this year, we had 4,000 visitors. Thank you.